and Life Q&A to help you invest with confidence. Register and pay online at www.insightpartnersafrica.com or send your payment via Airtel Money to 0977 445.
Those right in the breakfast show, of course, this time joined in by Insider Partners Africa and the Lama Insights, if you call it that way. My name is Chief Sansela. On this segment, and of course, joined in by Mkonkela, a financial educator at Inside Partner Africa. Well, good to have you on the show, by the way.
Good morning, Chidufia. How have you been?
No, good. Yeah, good. Despite paying our respects to our sixth Republican president. Yeah, but yes, the country is mourning, and yeah.
Yeah, it's quite very, very unfortunate. We just pray that we go through this period peacefully.
Oh yeah.
Yes. With respect as well.
With respect as well. Yeah, and then we leave the rest to God as well.
Yes.
Okay. So yes, today we are focused, of course, if you just joined us on Inside, Partners here, or this is where we get some education on how best we can invest our money smartly. Okay. Okay. And this program, of course, is one program that educates us in different ways. And today we have that, important question that we'll be looking at here. What happens when you lose shareholdings information or your stock is no longer active? What do you do? What happens? Where do you start from? And what happens to your shares when the investor passes on? Okay, you can run us there. I'm sure that question is like, wow, people asking themselves, hey, by the way, what happens?
So this question, Chilufia, there are I think about two questions that we are going to cover today. Are questions that I've received frequently. There's a bank, we won't mention its name, that was liquidated and handed over to another bank some time back, I think around 2016. So for those that follow what happens, they probably know which commercial bank this was. And so there's been quite a number of inquiries that I've received, mainly because I'm publicly on the radio on Tuesday talking about these things. So people feel like I've got all the answers, right? So they've been asking me, some individuals were bought shares through this commercial bank, but when it was liquidated, they've lost track of their shareholding and they don't know what to do. So that is what motivated this discussion this morning. So what happens when you've lost details of your stockbroker or your shareholding? How do you recover that information? And that is what I would like to discuss discuss today, and also just to try to help the listeners understand specific roles, because in the capital market, Chilufia, we've got organizations that play specific and very important roles that you as an investor needs to be aware of. And so this is what we'll be delving in today.
All right. So this one, just be very attentive as we get more information, from Conky right here. Okay. Yeah. So you can run us through on Conky. Where should people start from?
So let's start with the first question, Chilufia, of this individual that had shared with this bank. They bought shares through a bank. Now they've lost track. So the first thing we need to understand firstly is that you cannot buy shares directly from the company that is listed on the stock market. You buy through an intermediary, and that intermediary is called a stockbroker. And most commercial banks have been given what is referred to as a dealer's license by the Securities Exchange. So they are allowed to buy and sell shares on behalf of their clients. So it seems like this investor bought shares through the commercial bank. And when the commercial bank was liquidated, unfortunately, no communication came through with regards to an update of their shareholding status. But what's important to understand here is, regardless of whether you buy shares through a stockbroker, the record is kept by the LuSE under a system that is called the Central Securities Depository, sometimes referred to as Central Shares Depository. That is a record of all your activities, the shares that you buy, the company that you're buying shares in, the number of shares that you're buying, as well as the price you're buying those shares for at that moment. So that record is kept in the CSD. It's the Central Securities Depository, which is a record kept and maintained by the stock exchange. And our stock exchange in Zambia, the only one that we have, is the LuSE. So if you've lost that very important information, you need to contact the LuSE and give them perhaps some identification number. The most critical identification number you need to give them is your CSD account number. But if you've forgotten your CSD account number, you may use your NRC. So contact them. You can give them a call, you can write them an email, or you can visit their offices and give them your identification number. They should be able to trace the shareholding or the number of shares on investments in the different companies you've invested in by looking at your CSD record. So that information, it doesn't matter whether the stockbroker is liquidated or they've closed their business, that information you'll find with the LuSE.
Okay.
Yes, so that is the first part, Chilufya.
Okay. What if someone is actually unsure, Konki, where their shares are, like for now, and what do they do in that case? Where do they start from?
So if they are not sure where their shares are, the first contact is the LuSE, the Lusaka Securities Exchange. Through the LuSE, you need to provide either your CSD account, which is the account that helps the LuSE quickly find the information for you. But if you don't have the CSD account, you can always use your NRC, and the LuSE should be able to find that information. The other question that we got was, it was quite, I was touched by this one. This individual is a blind person. They had bought shares many years ago, but they don't know who the stockbroker. And when they contacted somebody, I don't know who they contacted, they were told that these shares are not even worth that much. They are just worth 1,500 kwacha. So they called me and said, Mkonki, one of their relatives called me. They're actually somewhere in Kasama. So one of their relatives called me and said, Mkonki, I've got this blind relative who bought shares in a company, but they don't know the stockbroker. They don't have all this information. How do we help them sell these shares? They want to sell the shares. So I was really touched by this. One thing you need to understand, as I've explained earlier, the records of your shareholding are kept by the LuSE under the Central Securities Depository, which is a record of the number of shares you are buying and the companies that you are investing in. So the primary contact point is the Lusaka Securities Exchange. They should be able to help you find that information. Now, with regards to the value of your share, it doesn't matter whether your shares are worth 100 kwacha or 200 kwacha. It is your money. And if you want to sell those shares, it doesn't matter. Nobody should discourage you to say that these shares are only worth 1,000 kwacha. So you still have the right if you want to sell the shares. And how do you determine how much you can make from the number of shares you have? You need to look at the total number of shares that you have in your account, your CSD account, and then look at the share price for the company. So if, for example, if you invested in Copperbelt Energy a couple of months ago, and let's say Copperbelt Energy today is selling at, per share is selling at 18 kwacha per share. For you to know how much you can make from the shares that you are holding, you simply need to multiply 18 kwacha by the number of shares. So for example, if you've got 1,000 shares and a share is 18 kwacha, so if you multiply 18 by 1,000, that will give you how much?
Wow.
Let's say about 18,000, right? So when you get that, you then need to consider 1.5% deduction for the fees, because the fees have to go to the stockbroker and the exchange and others. So it's 1.5% in total. Deduct that fee. Then the net is what you expect to get in terms of your capital or the profit that you've made. So that is how you know how much money you are going to make when excuse me when you sell your shares. So even if somebody doesn't know, they might be thinking that it's 1,500 kwacha that you're going to make. Do your own computations so that you understand how much money you can make when you want to sell the shares in the company that you've invested in. So very, very important.
Okay.
Yes.
So okay, let's just get a bit practical here. Let's say if I found out I had 1,500, for instance, right, worth of shares, how do I know how much I will get, if I sell them? Are there any costs involved in that case?
Yes, there are costs involved. As I've explained, you need to know the the share price of the company that you invested in.
Okay.
I gave an example of Copperbelt Energy. If you bought Copperbelt Energy even 10 years ago or 5 years ago, and you might even have bought it at 7 kwacha or 3 kwacha, it doesn't matter. What matters is the current market price. How much is the share today? If the share today is 18 kwacha, it means that you can sell your shares in Copperbelt Energy at 18 kwacha today, and then deduct the fees. The fees add up to a total of 1.5%. There's a percentage that goes to the stockbroker, there's a percentage that goes for clearing and settlement and others, but the total percentage deduction is 1.5%.
Okay.
And then you'll be able to know your net amount, the amount that you expect to get from your stockbroker.
Stockbroker, right?
Yes, so the stockbroker should be able to help give you the money into your bank. That's how you get your money back. Okay.
What if somebody's saying, I completely, let's say I've completely lost my, broker's contact details. I have no contact with them in any way. How, and I don't even have any share certificates with me. Is all hope lost there?
There's no hope lost, guys. That's why I was saying the Lusaka Securities Exchange. Perhaps I should actually even explain the different roles of the organizations that we have in Zambia. The LuSE is the stock exchange. It is the market where you can go and buy shares on the secondary market. So if you want to sell your shares, the LuSE will help you. They've got a record. In fact, they even know your stockbroker. So if you've lost contact of your stockbroker information, contact them. They'll be able to tell you who your stockbroker is. And if that stockbroker for some reason is liquidated or they've closed business, you can always migrate to another broker. You fill in a form and you transfer your shares to another active stockbroker. So there's that provision that can be facilitated for you. I think what's important really is always keeping up-to-date information with your stockbrokers and checking on them, checking whether they are taking care of your shareholding. Okay, so no hope is lost. The other critical organization we have on our capital market is the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission. The SEC is like the headmaster of the capital market. They monitor all the players, including the stockbrokers and what they are doing, and ensuring that the investors' interests are protected. So the Securities Exchange Commission may also have information with regards to the stockbroker that you are dealing with. So the SEC is also very, very important. They actually also monitor and supervise even the LuSE itself, the stock exchange. And then we've got licensed stockbrokers. These are the intermediaries through whom we buy and sell shares. Okay, and if anything had to happen to any of your stockbrokers, you can always swap the stockbroker. You're not stuck just because you opened a brokerage account that you should die with them. You can always transfer your shares to another stockbroker. Okay. Very important. And then we have just personal advisors or investment advisors. They may not be licensed to buy and sell shares for you, but they can provide investment advice on your behalf. So very important that you understand these key players on the stock market, guys. Let me talk about another issue that I'm now receiving in terms of inquiries. I bought shares in this company many years ago. You'll be very shocked how often I get this question. But then I stopped getting dividends. All of a sudden, I stopped getting dividends. What happened? Why am I not receiving dividends? So there could be a couple of reasons why you don't receive dividends, and you need to find out, even through the LuSE, the SEC, or you could even contact the company itself and find out why you're not receiving dividends. One of the reasons could be your contact details are not up to date. The company doesn't know how to get in touch with you. The company that normally pays out dividends is called CropServe. That's the company that normally pays out dividends for Zambian listed companies. So it's CropServe. So if you haven't been receiving dividends, check whether your contact details are up to date. Okay, very important that you regularly update your contact details with CropServe. And also another reason could be that the company just hasn't been declaring dividends. Maybe they haven't been profit making, or the shareholders and directors have decided to retain the profits in the business so as to grow the business. Many people don't understand that dividends are not guaranteed, and it's not a mandate that the company should pay you dividends. Dividends are only paid when the company declares them, and if the company is profitable, and it's even part of their policy to pay dividends. So when you are investing in companies, it's always important to check whether this is a dividend paying company if your interest is in a regular income. So if your interest is in a regular income, check whether this company has been paying dividends and how frequently they've been paying dividends. Check their history so that you won't be surprised one day when you don't receive the dividend. Very important that you check those in details.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, in closing, Konki, I want you to also mention what happens. I mean, we don't own this life, right? So, let's say, what happens if someone who owns shares passes away? And I'm thinking about the beneficiaries, right? How can they have access to those shares? That's as you give us the take-home message as we conclude.
So when somebody, if you are an investor and you had to pass away, unfortunately, what normally happens is what happens to any asset, because a share is an asset. So that asset will be transferred to your beneficiaries. So of course, you know what happens during funerals. An administrator is appointed. So that administrator simply has to go to your stockbroker and present the death certificate and all other details that are required, and then there's a transfer of the shares to the beneficiaries. So that normally is the procedure. There's quite a number of people that joined us online. Good morning, everyone that joined us. Chulufia, just a quick one.
Yes.
There's, I think, another question from Mundia saying, as a first-time investor, I'm considering making a 20% partial withdrawal from NAPS and investing it in a stable stock on the LuSE like Airtel or Zambia Sugar. What would be your thoughts on this? So Mundia, I appreciate your question. This is a personal question that I cannot provide advice on media like this. There's a number of things that we need to consider on your personal individual basis, and we can have a discussion afterwards. So you can give me a call and then we can have a discussion around your thinking. So that's all I had to share this morning, Chulufia.
Nice. Thank you very much, and we always appreciate the information you bring us. Okay, changing our mindsets and how we think when it comes to investment are very key, and we appreciate you.
Thank you so much, and good morning. If you want to watch this program again, go to YouTube, Mukonkela. You'll find the recording, and also join our Telegram group for the smart investors.
All right. Mukonki, all the best to you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. That is okay. So the lady, as usual, she's always here giving us information on how best we can invest in a very smart way, okay, without you even worrying much.